I have a confession to make. I suppose a church is probably the best place to make a confession. Public speaking terrifies me. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to lean on God to help me face my fears. And I truly believe that God wanted me to be here, as our family calendar was devoid of all entries on September 30th when Pastor Cindy reached out to me. As soon as I read her email, I raced to the paper calendar on the wall and assumed that there would be some family event that would preclude my ability to be here. But no. Shockingly, there was no excuse for me. And ironically, it wasn't until right after I promised her that I'd be here that our family calendar did in fact fill up, which is why I have no family here. But without a doubt, the Lord wanted me to be here and speak to you today, and here I am. I don't think there was ever a time in my life when I could have imagined specializing in end-of-life care for pets.
Even a monkey.
I did not grow up wanting to be a veterinarian. No, didn't even think about it. In high school, I yearned to move to New York and become a fashion buyer or something like that. And I was only negligibly more practical when I pursued a telecommunications degree and found myself working for the campus public radio station 2 years post-graduation. And there was nothing wrong with that, except that I felt that something was missing. I had this urge to save the world. I had a couple of friends that were working as veterinary technicians, and I was utterly fascinated by the stories they shared. Their days sounded exciting and a little gross, and they often involved puppies and kittens, and what was not to love? I took a couple of hardcore science classes just to kind of dip my toe in the water, and I excelled for the first time in my life. I truly felt that God was leading me to a new purpose. And I did it. I quit my job, and I went back to school full-time. And it was right around then that I met my future husband, and he loves to tell people about how he met me as a gainfully employed woman and married me as a poor college student. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. I can't argue. But for the first time in my life, I rose to immense challenge. And after 2 years of intense science and math courses, I got into vet school in the first try. And I loved it. Meanwhile, my husband successfully defended his dissertation and was offered a job at the Savannah River site. We bought a house right around the corner from here, and everything was falling into place for us. We couldn't wait until I graduated so that we could settle into our new home, and I couldn't wait to start my dream career. During my senior year, I saw so many cases, though. The worst of the worst, in the ICU particularly, where I thought, this little guy's not going home. He's never going to leave here, and I don't think this outcome is going to be good. And here they are languishing in an ICU cage with a bunch of loving strangers, but they're still strangers, and they should be with family. And this made quite an impression on me, and I vowed to be practical and honest with my future clients. But after the excitement of graduation dissipated, general practice was not exactly what I'd imagined. In my first year of practice, I encountered several very memorable clients who were less than enthused with me. One couple was really angry with me because I had the audacity to run a parvo test on their sickly puppy instead of magically identifying it as having low blood sugar. The puppy survived, but they were pretty mad at me as to how I went about treating their pet. And another lady screamed obscenities at me up at the front desk over our clinic policy of not selling heartworm preventive without an annual heartworm test, because couldn't I see that she loved her pets? And then there was the lady who literally dragged her obese and oh so sick dog out of our clinic, furious with me because I wasn't the doctor that her friend had recommended that she see. That doctor was having her day off that day. And all of the tests that I ran on her pup were inconclusive. In retrospect, I think he had cancer, because sometimes cancer does that. It can be very hard to find. And she was angry with me. I could not find a diagnosis, and I couldn't kill her pet. And in her rage against medical advice, she dragged him out the door, and we never heard from them again. In retrospect, it's easy to see that this woman was taking her grief and frustration out on the closest and most obvious target, but I didn't have any training or experience with helping grieving people. I was pretty sensitive and thin-skinned back then, so I took everything quite personal and was beyond crushed at all of these experiences. But thankfully, I met some really amazing families too, some of whom I'm still friends with to this day, and I tried to focus on them and the good that I was doing. But when we welcomed our first son, Jackson, it was becoming quite obvious to me that I wasn't going to be able to put my all into my career and take care of my growing family the way I wanted to. I developed debilitating anxiety that affected my ability to practice, and I had no backup plan and a boatload of student loans. I constantly prayed for comfort and wisdom to see my true path. The best option that I had at the time was just to back off a little and cut my hours to part-time, an option that I continued to pursue after we moved to Aiken a little over a year later. At this point, I felt certain that there was a better option for me, but I had no idea what that might be. After the birth of our younger son, I spent several years working in a local spay-neuter clinic, and I enjoyed that, but was forced to leave it 5 years later when I developed arthritis in my wrists and thumbs. All along, I prayed the Lord would guide me, and He did. I found myself working part-time at MCG. It will always be MCG to me. When a colleague reached out for help with their animal care program. A huge part of my job was devoted to brainstorming ways to promote comfort, happiness, and normal species-specific behaviors in my little kiddos. And I was able to work with a wide variety of species that I'd never imagined that I would encounter. And in retrospect, as I often worked in solitude and had a certain degree of freedom to institute change, it was during that time that I was developing my empathy across all species. One day I was flipping through a veterinary journal and spotted an article about Lap of Love. I'd like to claim that I started Lap of Love, but no, I did not. It was a then new and growing company founded by 2 young vets down in Florida, and it focused on in-home end-of-life care. And I remember pausing and thinking, wow, that is a brilliant idea. I could absolutely see myself doing that. And then I closed my journal and I carried on with my day, but I mentally filed it away. And lo and behold, about 6 months later, I'd come to a crossroads in my career, and I had just decided to leave my position. And as soon as I came to that decision, I didn't miss a beat. I knew exactly what I was going to do next. And I went into the office of my then boss and asked her to come with me and be my partner. And she did. And that was 6 years ago this October. And I didn't know it then, but God had answered my prayers. Without a doubt, I was called to this, and I truly believe that every step was a necessary part of my journey. And I'll never forget the first family that I helped. It was a cold January night when I arrived at their East Columbia home. It was a couple of aging hippies and their adult son, and I loved them from the outset. They lit candles and sipped wine, and I swear I might have smelled a little something else, but hey, they were at home, and who am I to judge? Huddled together on their bedroom floor with the greatest love, we set their beloved pup Ringo off to catch soaring frisbees once more. And it was hands down the most intimate and beautiful experience that I'd ever had as a veterinarian. And I knew I'd found my calling. I've been called Dr. Death, the Grim Reaper, the Angel of Death, and that was all just in the past month. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter how tired I might be, or if I'm not feeling so good that day, or maybe I had some family plans and I'm a little grumpy because I got called away. I always feel myself filled with the Holy Spirit when the door to a home opens. Without question, I feel God with me, and I am convinced that He is always there to put the right words in my mouth. And after listening to me, you're probably wishing that He would have put better words in my mouth right now, but frankly, I do too. But yeah, He just cleared my calendar. The actual speaking part, He leaves up to me. I didn't expect that my experience as a hospice veterinarian would deepen my empathy towards people, and yet it has. Being a stranger invited into someone's home is incredibly humbling and intimate. I've been in palatial estates and tiny cramped campers, immaculate homes, and rooms that are soiled with the urine and feces of the babies that I've arrived to help. I don't think twice about it. I'm there to help, and there's never any judgment. It's easier to feel annoyed or judgy in a veterinary office or over the phone when you suspect or can see their pet is suffering. But I find it nearly impossible to feel anything but pure empathy, no matter the circumstances, when I sit with a grieving family and I'm able to see the situation through their loving eyes. For this reason, I encourage you to always try to give folks the benefit of the doubt, as we will all want people to do for us in our darkest and most vulnerable hours. Take to heart the wisdom of the safety procedures card from the airplane and put your own oxygen mask on before you go forth to help others. We're not perfect like Jesus. We kind of have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. Jack Kornfield said in his Buddha's little instruction book, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. It took me years to learn that I'm immensely more empathetic and compassionate if I'm well rested, not hungry, and have placed the needs of my family and myself first. As harsh as that sounds, it's a fact. If I feel like I'm neglecting my family or myself, then I become resentful and eventually a burnout. I generally don't make last-minute evening appointments anymore for multiple reasons. My terrible night vision, my need for adequate sleep, and because it can be very disruptive to my family to zoom out the door unexpectedly. And as I tell folks over the phone, my goal is to guide you through the process so that we can avoid a crisis situation. Because once that happens, we've lost that opportunity. We've lost what we were striving for, a peaceful and stress-free departure for their babies. Minor health issues over the past year have also forced me to scale things back a bit. I have a finite amount of energy, so I have to be selective about how I channel it. Lastly, I want to encourage everyone to seek a better level of communication with your own veterinarian. I hear time and time again from folks they feel like their vet values money more than anything. And I assure you, without knowing who your veterinarian is, that is not the case. No one gets into this for the money, especially not now with the skyrocketing costs of a veterinary education. Your vet should be prepared to offer you a wide variety of options, whether it is related to wellness care or diagnosing and treating your sick pet. The litigiousness of today's society demands that they offer the full standard of options. But if this is not in your budget, that's okay. It is okay to let them know. There's zero shame in allocating your funds so that you take care of the two-legged family members first. In fact, this is a must. Remember what I said about the oxygen mask. And here's the thing, there's never any guarantee that spending the money for the best in diagnostics and care is going to result in the best outcome. Sometimes you can spend all the money in the world and it's just their time to move on. If you can and want to do it, great. Just don't feel guilty if you need to say, you know what, Doc? I love my baby very much, but my budget just won't allow that today. Can we sit down together to figure out the best plan for what I can spend? Your vet wants nothing more than to see your baby healthy and happy, and most of them have been or currently are on a very tight budget themselves, so they get it. But they're under a ton of pressure to figure out what is going on with their patients, who incidentally are not talking, and figure out the best course of action, and often that's in the absence of a firm diagnosis. And there's an inordinate amount of pressure and anxiety associated with that. Pressure and anxiety that incidentally was too much for yours truly. Please be generous with your empathy. Your vet needs it too. Everyone needs it, and nearly all of us deserve it, and it is a wonderful way to share God's love all around. Trust God and trust your journey. Amen.